Okay, so welcome to this introduction to microtomy. Microtomy, of course, is one of those essential skills for any histologist, and specifically in these units we spend a lot of time teaching you how to cut sections off a paraffin block. So I've spent the last hour or so cutting some sections. I don't do this every day, which means that I have to remind myself of all the various technical issues that can occur, and of course you will experience those same issues as you start to learn this technique. So this is a block of liver. We'll go through the various stages from the initial cleaning of the excess wax around the outside so it fits snugly onto the chuck of the microtome. We'll then talk about the technique for facing the block, that is to remove all the excess wax from the surface to reveal the tissue itself. And then we'll go on to demonstrate how important it is to cool down the block so that you get nice even sections with minimal crumpling as the sections come off the blade. Of course, then we have to mount those sections onto some glass slides, and that's a technique in itself, as you'll see. I'm reasonably experienced with performing microtomy, but despite the level of experience, you can still experience issues, and you'll see a couple that I experienced. This particular room is often prone to various air currents, depending upon whether the door is open or closed, or the air conditioning. And so I'm kind of glad that you'll get to see some of those issues, because it'll show you a fairly typical experience of someone coming in to perform microtomy. Okay, so now starting with the block straight from embedding, you can see that there is a little bit of wax just on the outside there of the cassette. So the first step is to clean that off, just using a blunt scraper such as this spatula. And the reason for doing that is that any excess wax on the outside of the cassette can cause the block to wobble during microtomy, and if it wobbles then you'll get very uneven sections coming off the blade. So I'll just scrape down each of those edges just to check that it's all good, and that looks pretty much okay now. Okay, so pull the lever forwards, insert the block, and then just really make sure that that's not moving around. Okay, that feels good. Now, there is no blade in here at the moment, and that's because ideally you should never put the block in when the blade is there, but we do have some safety measures that I'll talk about in a moment. Now, we will insert the blades for you this semester just as an extra safety measure. These are disposable blades, but still very sharp. We'll just insert that approximately to position. Then I'll use the pencil just to complete that to avoid having contact. Clamp that in place and then insert the blade guard. So that blade guard should always be in place when you're not cutting. On the right hand side here there are two locks as well. At the top you can see there's a lock, and at the bottom of that hand wheel there's a lock as well. When either of those two are engaged, the right hand wheel can't move. Now, why that's a safety measure is because the chuck will move up and down if that wheel is not locked. So in the event that you've forgotten to put the blade guard up, if you are then putting a block onto the chuck, you won't accidentally draw your hands down onto the blade. Okay, so those are both pretty much locked at the moment. Yep, that's nearly right. Yep, okay, so that's locked in place. And it's all about just preventing accidental dragging of your fingers onto the blade. Okay, now the block is approximately about 1 centimetre, I guess, away from the blade, and that's way too far away. So we use that left hand wheel to move the entire chuck forwards until which time that the face of the block is just touching the blade. So I'll just move that either forwards or backwards. Just turn to the side here so you can see that a bit better. Okay, so by moving it in and out, you'll get it approximately to the right position. Now if I look down there, the GoPro's a little bit misaligned with where my eyes are, but I think that's approximately correct. Then when it's close, use the right hand wheel. Now that's set to about 3 microns, as you can see there, just in that enlarged view there. So 3 microns will take a long time to move that to the correct position. So instead we'll use this trimming key on the left hand side. Now when that's fully depressed, it's about a 10 times increase in the distance moved every time you rotate that right hand wheel. So now we're starting to face the block. That's trimming away some of the wax on the surface. We'll then engage the guard, remove the block and have a look. Okay, so that's not too bad. Just in the top right hand corner, if I tilt that in the light so the GoPro will catch it, yeah, see the bottom part is nice and clear, but that top right hand corner, you can just see it's got a slightly different texture to it because it's still covered with paraffin wax. So we'll just check the guard, put that back on, and we'll continue to face that until the tissue is completely showing through. So probably another 3 or 4 turns of the wheel with the trimming key depressed. That should be enough, I think. Guard up, lock on, and then that should be okay. Yep, so now if we check that again, just turning in the light a little bit, you can see that that tissue is now completely showing through. Okay, now the next step is to cool down the block, because at room temperature we'll find the sections that come off at 3 microns will crumple easily. Now that's not very cold, but hopefully it'll be cold enough. I only just turned that on about 5 minutes ago. So while that's cooling down, we can just clean the area. Always important to prevent cross-contamination of your samples, whether in a diagnostic setting or a research setting. That's now had about 5 minutes. I'm a bit doubtful of the temperature, but we'll give it a go. It should be cool enough to at least demonstrate the next step. So in theory, being cooler, we should now start to be able to get a few flat sections. Just check the position. It's not too far off where it needs to be. And you may just still need to use the trimming key initially if the block's too far away. Okay, so that's approximately where it needs to be. I'll just get rid of that first section because that's going to be way too thick, having had the trimming key down. Now, this is the tricky part to learn, is you need to try to encourage a few sections off the blade and then to grab them. So use them as a handle, and then rather than pulling, you're essentially resting those sections and trying to draw them away. Now that's still clumping quite badly. You can just see there, the ones closest to the blade. The ones further out are okay, but yeah, that's clearly not cold enough. So as often as the case, you will need to cool that down further. So we'll put that back onto the cold plate. 5 minutes later, and we'll give that another go. Okay, make sure it's firm. Remove the safety measures. And then again, reposition. That's about right. And oh, that's pulling a bit on one side, as you can see. That's not a good observation. That suggests that maybe the blade is getting a bit blunt now, or there might be a bit of material stuck to the blade. But let's persevere and see what we can get. Okay, that's coming off a bit straighter. All right, so gently grab that first section and try to get 3 or 4 good sections. No, that's still crumpling. I've maybe got 1 or 2 at the beginning that are okay, but you can see each of those later sections is crumpling quite a bit towards the middle. But grabbing this paintbrush, I'll demonstrate the technique for cradling that across to the water bath and then layering it gently. So that's not bad, at least it demonstrates the process. So there's a few flat ones there and some other crumply ones. Now we take a glass slide and we go down, trying to avoid a scooping action. So as shown here in the picture on the right hand side, go straight down, bring it to the edge and then pull straight up. And you should be able to find that the section will position itself quite nicely. And then removing any unwanted sections, just using some tissue. That's the best way to do it. Just lay it across and drag it to remove any of those unwanted sections. Especially important when changing blocks to prevent cross-contamination, but also to remove some of those other sections that we don't want. Now, having mounted, we should label those immediately, and the information that's required is your name, the date, and the name of the tissue. So that should be done routinely. And we always label after mounting to be absolutely sure that we know the identity of the section on that slide. Okay, just checking the safety measures. I think we can do better than that. The temperature of the block is still a little bit warm, and that blade is concerning me now. It's been used a fair bit with all the trimming. I actually trimmed another block as well, and so we're going to remove that. You can keep it as a trimming blade, so you don't need to dispose of it, but essentially it is a sharp, and so it goes into the sharps bin. Okay, so get the dispenser and we'll get a fresh blade. Again, being very careful to avoid the front there. Just position that approximately and then use the pencil to complete the insertion and then clamp that in place and then put the guard back and just check the other safety measure there as well. Okay, now hopefully, yeah, there's a lot more frost on that cold plate as you can see, so I think we're getting a bit closer. I should have turned the cold plate on earlier. Okay, now insert that. Just recheck the position again. Sometimes during the cooling process the block does contract a little bit, and so you're not always exactly back where you thought you were. Okay, it's just starting to come onto the blade now. So just need to coax those first few sections to come forwards, so gently grabbing with the forceps. Yeah, it's not quite there. This can be frustrating, so patience is really important. So always take your time. Okay, oh that's nice. Oh, look at that. So really nice sections coming off. So a new blade, a cold block is what has done the job there. Now we shouldn't be too greedy. The tendency is to keep on cutting when they look that nice, but now just gently cradle. Oh, there's a lot of air currents for some reason. What's going on here? I've lost it. Nah, I've lost it. I'm embarrassed to tell you that that's clumped up in the right hand corner there. I've maybe got one here. Okay, so I've got one section from a really good ribbon, so I just mount that up. Yeah, it looks pretty good in the middle there. Okay, so I got one. Now, why was all that? Yeah, okay. Big clump in the corner. So just collect all those clump sections that we don't want. Yeah, throw in the bin. It's the door. Okay, all right, that was my mistake. So go back and try again. So it's good just to show you that these are the things that can typically happen. All right, so I'll try again. The problem is that the block is probably warmed up a little bit since having cut those good sections, but we'll keep on going. Oh, now they're sort of going down behind the blade. All right, we'll try and get a few. Yeah, they're just probably a bit of static electricity or something is making them curl the wrong way. Just try and gently coax a section forwards. There we go, got one. And maybe another one, come on. All right, now just switch to the forceps and just try and get a little ribbon to come off there. No more than 3 or 4. That's not too bad. You can see they're crumpling slightly more than the last ones. Okay, that's nice, okay. So I'll try not to be greedy. And where's my paintbrush? Okay, so again, just gently cradling that off the blade and just slowly transferring that, trying to avoid any air currents. And then I kind of lost control of that again, but if I'm careful, yep, that's not too bad. Okay, so we've actually got at least 3 or 4 really good sections there, and that's not bad. So if you can get something like that the first time you cut, you're doing actually pretty good. And then straight down, straight up, and then straight down and straight up. We've got a few good sections there. All right, now that was enough just to cool that, to warm up that block just a fraction. So I'm going to put that back on the cold plate again for another 5 minutes. Okay, now we'll try again. Just taking a wider view now on the GoPro so that we can see all the sections. Remove the safety measures. Okay, just try and get a little bit of a section to start. Sometimes you find that the paintbrush is a gentler way just to coax the first few sections forwards. And then I'll grab the forceps and just try to get a bit of a ribbon. Again, there's no rush. Take your time. Okay, back to the paintbrush again. Just try and coax a few sections forwards. Okay, and then back to the forceps again. Just try and get a bit of a handle. Okay, so that's not too bad. A little bit of crumpling, but I think that's okay. Certainly usable. And then gently cradle those sections. Now with the door closed, that's a little bit easier. And that's pretty good. So I'm finally happy I've put it all together. And so depending upon how many sections that you need to cut, that may be enough. Okay, so just position those. Remove any that you don't want, and then just mount those as previously. Remembering to label immediately following, so that there's no chance of mixing up which sections belong to what block. Okay, so there you have it. That's an introduction to what's a fairly typical episode of microtomy for me, in terms of juggling a number of factors, making sure you've got the right temperature of the block, and really being patient, and you should be fine.